Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to be covering the first campaign mission, Beyond the Halls of the Prophets, for Star Trek Into the Unknown. It's basically going to be a playthrough, touching on some of the rules as we go. The recent discovery of the Bajoran wormhole has connected the Alpha and Gamma quadrants for the first time. For Bajor, this revelation by the Prophets is a chance to move beyond the brutal Cardassian occupation and peacefully found a new colony in the Gamma quadrant. But all communications with New Bajor have abruptly ceased, and nearby Federation citizens have disappeared. This seemingly confirms reports of a military power known as the Dominion, which controls the Gamma quadrant. Each side has set a fleet into the sector in order to look after their own interests. For the overture, both sides will be conducting planetary scans and scanning anomalies. The first campaign mission starts out with specific officers and ships for each faction, which are given in the campaign guide. Each side lays out its 5 core officers and assigns a command, operations and science chief, plus has line officers to fill out their crew rosters, 1 for each ship. Once this has been done, you assign your crew to your different ships, and your ranking officer becomes your Commodore for your fleet. So for the Federation here, it's the Intrepid Captain, and it's the Founder for the Dominion that's the Commodore. Okay, round 1, and it's the Dominion that have priority. The ships have deployed as the layout is given in the campaign mission, and the Founder has called a warp action to take the Battlecruiser into the first system. Following suit, the Intrepid Captain also calls warp and moves towards another system. All 3 systems have a mix of Federation and Dominion priorities, so the ships will be passing by each other, but as this mission only has combat directives and the directives are in a cam state at the moment, there may not be any action for the first little bit, as the mission priorities will be conducting planetary scans. And here we see my first error. The planetary scan action is carried out with your science stat, and the Jem'Hadar Battlecruiser actually has a science stat of 3, and I only roll 2 dice, but we do a reroll here, so 3 dice in total to get the 2 that's needed to succeed for it. First victory point for the Dominion. Next action will be the USS Galaxy carrying out a planetary scan, much like the Dominion just did. Again, I get the right value here and roll the right number of dice. We get to re-roll instrument power here, which is just as well, so we get to re-roll the blank and analysis, this time getting the 3 successes we need and an analysis. One of those is a breakthrough success actually. That gives us 1 victory point. It also allows us to move the influence tracker for the analysis result. Vorta Supervisor calls warp to bring the Jem'Hadar attack fighter into one of the contested sectors. and the crew of the Defiant come into the same sector as the Jem'Hadar attack fighter. Both ships have overshot each other with their warp manoeuvres as they head towards their own specific objectives. As both sides have now committed 3 officers each, both sides pass and move into the standby phase for the extra actions that are just laid out by each ship. The Federation get to go first, and the USS Defiant carries out a planetary scan on the nearest objective. We get a reroll, and that gives 2 successes, which is enough to conduct a planetary scan. They get 1 victory point. The Jem'Hadar Battlecruiser slowly begins to pull up its dial by calling alert status and moving up to green 2. As does the USS Galaxy. Jem'Hadar attack fighter carries out a planetary scan. That's 2 for its science of 2, and we get 1 reroll. There's an analysis that stays on the board there, but they've managed to luck out and get 2 successes, so that's 1 victory point for the successes, and they get to move the influence tracker for having an analysis result. USS Galaxy is within 2 inches of a hazard, and so it's revealed to be a minor nebula, which causes obscuring to happen if we're at close range of it. Moving into the ready phase, there's no surprises here. We just refresh the energy and the officers for each of the ships, based on their current alert status. Round 2, and the USS Galaxy's scholarly doctor calls Impulse to reposition within its sector. This will be used to reposition to enable them to carry out a warp manoeuvre next to move towards the next objective, which is in a different sector. Similarly, the Jem'Hadar Battlecruiser will be repositioning here in order to line up its next warp manoeuvre to move into another sector. Both sides actually have secondary mission objectives in order to scan anomalies within the systems, and the USS Defiant here is just lining one of those up with an impulse maneuver, coming up towards one of these hazards. Similarly, the Jem'Hadar attack fighter is also doing an impulse maneuver to come round to scan an anomaly that's near it. The scan anomaly action is carried out by your science statistics, so that's 2 intuition dice we've got here. It's led by the Vigilant Security Chief, which doesn't add anything to it. We do get rerolls on it though, so we push it for a reroll here, and we actually get 2 successes plus the breakthrough success. So it's revealed that it's a strange relic here which requires us to carry out another test, as I've just shown on the screen there. So we've rolled it again and passed the difficulty on it, so we actually get a nice little advantage token and get to move the influence tracker by 2. The Jem'Hadar attack fighter is also attempting to scan the anomaly, but with the reroll failed to actually get the successes they need to reveal the anomaly. They do get to spend the analysis result though and get to move the influence tracker. Into the standby phase, and the Jem'Hadar attack fighter again attempts to carry out that scan anomaly action, and yet again fails to pass that, so we still don't get to reveal the hazard. We do get another analysis result though, which again pushes that influence track back to their side. So although the Dominion aren't getting victory points, they are actually pushing their objectives forward because their influence is increasing, and it is making it more likely that it will be the Dominion complication that will be revealed at the end of round 3. The Dominion Battlecruiser now moves to warp and heads towards the next system which has an objective in it for it. The Battlecruiser passes over a hazard at warp, so that reveals the hazard. That's at number 1, which is another obscuring nebula. Since the hazard doesn't actually stop the Battlecruiser's movement, it carries on with its movement into the sector. USS Galaxy moves up to yellow alert. Moving into the hazard phase, the Jem'Hadar attack fighter is close to an unrevealed anomaly. It's revealed to be a fluctuating star, which only affects if you move over it at warp. Round 2's ready phase again is pretty normal, just refreshing officers and recharging energy as based on the alert level of each ship. Round 3, and the Jem'Hadar Battlecruiser's Vorta Supervisor calls an impulse manoeuvre to move in closer into within range with the next objective. while the Battlecruiser repositions within the sector. The Galaxy then powers up its warp engines and flies off towards its next objective in the other system. Jem'Hadar Battlecruiser carries out its planetary scan. It needs 2 successes on 3 intuition dice. Again, I misread the card, it should have been 3 dice, but I only rolled 2, but I got enough successes to allow the Jem'Hadar to pull through. Again, I'm blaming lack of sleep here for some reason. I gave the scholarly doctor here some expertise dice based on its biology instead of logic, as it says in the mission action there. Didn't affect the result at all there. We still managed to get 2 successes, which gave the victory point for the planetary scan. Jem'Hadar Attack Fighter moves up its alert level status. And the USS Galaxy calls an impulse maneuver in order to reposition. All of the Overture's objectives have been completed so far, so now the ships are actually just pushing up their alert level status or repositioning in order to get ready for the Overture kicking in, which will be the Dominion's Overture. Another pretty standard ready phase to get ready for the next round here, with refreshing officers and bringing energy levels back. Should be noticed that the 2 big ships both move officers into engineering. Both sides are needing to make sure they've got energy on their ships. And an officer in engineering can certainly help with this, because it takes out some of the variability that can happen with your alert status. Both sides currently have 3 victory points each as we move into the complication. Into the Inferno. While the Dominion often uses diplomacy to achieve its political ends, it's equally willing to wield brutal violence. What began as a scouting encounter has touched off into a clash of powerful fleets. Each side flips its combat directives to its hostile sides, and the ships can move their dial by 1 from their alert status if they wish so. With new Federation and Dominion assets revealed within the systems, the main objective of this complication is to carry out bombardments against the opposite side's assets. The Defiant's Vigilant Security Chief is able to carry this out against the first one here, and because they're within close range, they're able to use the breakthrough success and get an extra victory point as well as succeeding in the task. So that's 2 victory points. The Jem'Hadar first also carries out a bombardment action on their closest objective, and with their rerolls are able to get another great success. So that's 1 victory point plus breakthrough success, which gives another victory point. So 2 victory points again to the Dominion. That's now 5 victory points each. Interestingly, the complication when revealed has given 2 Dominion strategic assets in the same sector that the Battlecruiser is in, and the same is also true for where the Galaxy is. There's 2 Federation assets there, so it's like they're guarding their own territories. Which side will blink first, I don't know, but both the Battlecruiser and the Galaxy are repositioning in order to see which way they'll go to try and provoke the other one to make the first move. The Defiant changes heading with an impulse manoeuvre in order to position itself more closely towards where the Dominion strategic assets are. Having a better facing, the Jem'Hadar attack fighter elects to call warp and move out of the system first. The Jem'Hadar Battlecruiser repositions itself, moving closer to the system boundary so that it could possibly move into the next system with a warp manoeuvre. The Defiant now calls a warp manoeuvre, moves out of the system in what could be seen as quite an aggressive move, trying to provoke the Dominion into doing something. Jem'Hadar doesn't like this and so fires a warning shot at them. It's a miss. As we've played a few games of this before, we decided to try something a little bit different here, which isn't covered in actually the first campaign mission, and we used the detached saucer move. The theory being here that the Federation ship's going to leave the saucer section behind to defend the 2 objectives that are within the system that it's in, and the star drive can push forward with the Defiant in order to try and get the other 2 objectives. Cleanup and refreshing happens as normal in the ready phase, with officers being refreshed and energy being replenished. Seeing the USS Galaxy detach its saucer section, the Jem'Hadar attack fighter decides to go for broke and push forward towards the objectives that are going to be guarded by the saucer. The Defiant also pushes on by calling warp to go into the other system where the Jem'Hadar Battlecruiser is. It needs to get those objectives. The Jem'Hadar Battlecruiser decides to take a pot shot at the USS Defiant since it's pushed into that sector. What a cheek is what they're saying. They've rolled away there and some shots go in towards the rear of the Defiant. As the Battlecruiser got 2 analysis result, it activates Pierce 2, which means the Defiant can't use any of its shields. It's only got 2 shields, so the damage goes through to its hull and it passes a critical hit, which unfortunately is a warp core breach. Disaster. Closes off engineering actions, including reserve energy management. The USS Galaxy's captain calls a warp manoeuvre to bring the star drive towards the Defiant to give it some support. Seeing the star drive pull off, the Jem'Hadar attack fighter calls warp to enter the system where the objectives are. The Galaxy saucer section responds by firing weapons towards the Jem'Hadar attack fighter. The saucer elects to hit the rear of the Jem'Hadar fighter, which only has 2 shields. Because it got 3 successes, that's 2 shields come off plus one of the hulls. Using a standby action, the USS Defiant tries to vent the antimatter to repair the warp core breach. They really need this to succeed. That's an operations of 4 dice and they need 2 successes, which they get. So they manage to vent the antimatter and their engineering section is back online. Jem'Hadar Battlecruiser calls an impulse manoeuvre in order to reposition. This will hopefully give it better target sight on the Defiant, plus maybe because it takes up so much room, prevent the star drive section of the Galaxy actually getting into the same system. Wanting to hit hard, the USS Galaxy moves up to red alert. Jem'Hadar attack fighter has position on one of the objectives in the sector, so conducts a bombardment. Success, 1 victory point. We're now moving into the final round, round 6. The USS Defiant carries out a bombardment on their closest objective. We get our op stat and our ordnance, plus we get rerolls of our weapons power, so we get 3 rerolls here. We've got 2 analysis in that major result, which doesn't give us anything there. The reroll gives us the discovery, which we convert to a breakthrough success, and then we spend our advantage token in order to get another reroll of one of the dice. It all comes down to this dice, and we get the 2 successes that we need. That gives us the victory point for that objective. The Jem'Hadar Battlecruiser decides to fire weapons on the Defiant again targeting the rear, which has less weapons. Make a slight mistake here. I roll 4 dice for their weapons power, but as you can see, they've only actually got 3. So for the next 2 attacks that they fire, I'm actually rolling an extra dice. It doesn't actually affect that much. 2 shields off in the first attack there. The Jem'Hadar pushes forward and powers up another attack. And again, another 2 shields come off. The saucer section attempts to fire weapons at the attack fighter. 4 dice, 2 hits, so that's 2 shields. The Jem'Hadar do a bombardment against their final objective, and they manage to pull it off and get a victory point. The Galaxy class calls an impulse maneuver in order to try and reposition so that it can then warp into the sector because there's no space at its current angle. As it's the final round, the Federation side decides to commit a 4th officer, which they normally wouldn't have, in order to push through and get that warp action to get into that sector, and they'll still have their standby action in order to do something else in case they need to get that objective or even fire on the Jem'Hadar. The Dominion pass as they've got all their objectives and they've fired already, so there's not much they can do. The Defiant calls another bombardment action on the final objective, and they manage to get enough successes, especially with the reroll, in order to get their victory point. All the objectives are complete. The game will finish at the end of the round. There is really no more actions to carry out because the Star Drive won't be able to take out the Dominion Battlecruiser. So an overall draw in terms of victory points, but a Dominion victory in terms of the scenario and complication. The Dominion have managed to carry a strong message to the Federation in the Alpha Quadrant. All that was left to do after the mission was to actually calculate any strategic points and campaign points that were left using the guidelines in the campaign book. We actually both got no campaign points for that because it was a technical draw, although the Dominion did win, so they got 1 extra strategic point out of it. So it was 3 for the Federation and 4 for the Dominion. Federation bought Hints of the Past with Benjamin Sisko that you got for getting the strange artefact in the overture, and then they also paid 2 points for a veteran operator in the form of Dax to go onto their roster. The Dominion, on the other hand, spent 2 points for a specialised leader on Ometa Clan to add to their roster, and also got to use Ruthless Reputation for Talak Talan and individual cloning, all things that we can use in further campaigns. Hope you all enjoyed that, and I hope you'll join me again in the future once I finally get to post another video. Thanks again, cheers, bye.